Hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you could join us today. We've been looking at these rhythms of grace from Jesus' life, practices that we can put into place in our own lives. Because what we've been looking at is there is a way to live a relaxed, unhurried, content life in amongst the pressures and difficulties of life. We've been looking at the way, the better way of Jesus over the past few weeks, and we've looked at the stillness and the silence of the eremos, of the quiet place. We've also looked at Shabbat, the ancient practice of resting and delighting in God. And another rhythm I'd like us to think about is simplicity. Now, a friend once said to me, Fiona, you can either have stuff or you can have space. Wealth and technology have continued to rise in Britain and lots of other Western countries, but happiness hasn't increased at the same pace. Now, adjusting for population, about 10 times as many people in the West suffer from unipolar depression or unremitting bad feelings that don't have a specific cause than they did 10 times more than 50 years ago. It seems that we have more of everything except for contentment and happiness. So, what can we do? I am not suggesting that we get rid of all our stuff, that we burn our credit cards, because that is not the problem. The problem isn't stuff. The problem is twofold. We tend to not set a limit on the amount of stuff we have because we have an insatiable human desire for more. And we tend to think that we need all sorts of stuff to be happy when in reality we need very few. Now, Jesus and the New Testament writers reckoned that we need just two things, food and clothes. However, they lived in a fairly warm, dry climate, and we really don't. So let's add shelter to the list. What if the only material things we need to live a rich and satisfying life are food, clothing, and shelter? And if we doubt our ability to live that simply and to thrive, we're not alone. The thing is, like most dangerous ideas, the one that says more money and more stuff will equal more happiness, it's a half-truth, because more money will make life better to a point. Especially if you're poor. I mean, poverty is horrible, and lifting people out of poverty will improve their lives, and it's what we should be looking at. But it only works to a point. Now, for a lot of us, the point is something we haven't reached. They've done the research, and the point is £55,000 or $75,000. They worked it all out. And after that, there's a law of diminishing returns, because the most important things in life aren't things at all. They're relationships and experiences with family, friends, and with God. And so many of Jesus' teachings, especially about money and stuff, were just him telling stories about the way the world actually is. Jesus said you cannot serve God and money. It's not a command, it's just a statement. Jesus didn't say you shouldn't, he said you can't. He also said life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. Again, not a command, just a statement of the way life actually works. Jesus was teaching what was true. After all, we keep coming back to the verse. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So what if the equation more stuff equals more happiness is just bad maths? What if more stuff actually equals more stress? It means working longer, debt, taking more time up. It means cleaning the stuff, maintaining the stuff, fixing the stuff, organising and storing the stuff that we maybe don't even need. And what if more stuff equals less of what actually matters? Less time, less financial freedom, less generosity, less peace, less focus, less creativity, less time for relationships, less prayer, and less of what we're really actually aching and longing for. About 25% of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount was teaching about stuff. But in the midst of teaching about stuff, Jesus seems to take a detour to talk about eye care. He says, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness?" Now, in Jesus' day, if people said that you had a healthy eye, it had a double meaning. It meant you were focused on living with a high degree of intentionality, and it meant that you were generous to the poor. When you looked at the world and you saw those in need, you did your best to help. An unhealthy eye was the opposite. When you looked out into the world, you were distracted by all that glitters, and you lost your focus on what really mattered, and you closed your hands to the poor. So the very next verse is, "No one can have two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." So Jesus is saying you cannot serve both God and money. He doesn't say should not, cannot, but it's not a command. He is commenting on the way life is. You cannot live for the better way of Jesus and also go along with the overconsumption that's normal in our culture. We have to pick. And if we're on the fence, the next line from Jesus is a clincher. "Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life." Jesus is connecting money and stuff to worry. And the "therefore" ties 3 short teachings on money and stuff to one long teaching about worry. We worry about what we worship. And if we worship money, if our hope and trust is in wealth and possessions, it's going to consume us, it's going to eat us alive. And nobody wants that. So which of Jesus' rhythms of grace can help us find a better way? And simply it's simplicity, or simple living, or minimalism, but not a design aesthetic or in an architectural style sense, and not in a poverty sense. It's not about a bare, joyless life with no freedom to enjoy material things. It's not about being organised and categorising and alphabetising my stuff, your stuff. When we only have what we need, if what we have then is useful and sparks joy, then we'll have what we need. Simplicity is an inward reality that can be seen in an outward lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle of choosing to use our time and money and talents and possessions towards what matters most. Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just a message for rich people? Well, yeah, of course. Poor people don't need simple living. People in poverty just call it living. They don't need minimalism, they need justice. Now, most of us aren't poor. Zero guilt trip. But if your income is more than £18,000 a year, you are in the top 10% of the world's wealth. And if your income is more than £25,000 a year, then you're in the top 1%. And that means that Paul is writing to most of us when he said, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life." Simplicity is a practice based purely on the life of Jesus. Jesus was friends with the rich and the poor. And in his life and in his teachings, we see him living in that tension that runs all the way through Scripture. On one hand, the world and everything in it are very good They're God's creation, which he wants us to delight in and enjoy and share with those in need. But on the other hand, too much wealth can be dangerous. It leads us to rely on our wealth and our possessions instead of God. And it has the potential to turn us away from God and to widen the gap between those who have and those who don't. And we see Jesus living lightly and easily in that tension. But to be fair, Jesus clearly would err on the side of minimalism. Now, at Life Group this week, we are going to look at some of the ways we can bring simplicity into our lives and lifestyles. And to be clear, simplicity isn't the answer to the clutter and rush of our modern lives, but it is an answer. We often hear less but better, but what if less is better? For some people, clothes are going to be the easiest place to start, but the key is to start wherever you are going to grow the most and it's going to be the most benefit for you. So we can pray about it and go from there. But if you have 20 pairs of shoes, start there. If you've got boxes of magazines stored all over the place, start there. If you have a real thing for coffee cups and you can't fit them all in your cupboard, start there. The question isn't what would Jesus do? The question is, what would Jesus do if he were me? If he was in my life, in my environment? Because although we might feel it'll cost us to follow Jesus in this way of paring things back, of living simply, it will cost us more not to follow him in this way. Now, Paul said, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And that line often gets ripped out of context. It can get used for raising money for charity or getting a new job or beating cancer or raising a family. And they are all things that we need God's help with. But Paul was talking about contentment, about how to cope with that nagging feeling of always wanting more. Because there will always be something just out of our reach, something that looks desirable and attractive. But contentment isn't denying all desire. It's living in a way that our unfulfilled desires no longer curb our happiness. We all live with limitations and unfulfilled desires, but that doesn't mean we can't be content and happy. The truth is, we can be content and happy right here, through Christ who strengthens us, through investing our resources in ongoing relational connection to Jesus and to other people. We have everything we need to live a happy, content life because we've got access to God the Father, to his loving attention, and that is an easy yoke.
Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. We've looked at some of these rhythms of grace from the life and lifestyle of Jesus. Finding a quiet space, the eremos, where we can hear from and be with God. Taking time to rest in and delight in God, in his creation and in our place in it. And finally, considering if we can simplify our lives and be generous with our resources so that we can live freely and lightly, enjoying our blessings whilst not entrusting our contentment to them. There are loads of good books about this. I obviously love Marie Kondo's book about clearing clutter called Spark Joy. But if you want to dig deeper into these rhythms of grace, I'd really encourage you to have a look at John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which this series has been based on. Thank you for tracking with us, and I pray that you will grow or continue to deepen your relationship with our wonderful Creator God, that through these habits of silence, Sabbath, and simplicity, that you will live freely and lightly, lives full of love, joy, and peace as you walk in this better way of Jesus.